Hello everyone, this is China Paradigm, where we, Dashi Consulting, interview seasoned entrepreneurs in China. Hello everyone, I'm Matthieu David, the founder of Dashi Consulting and its podcast, China Paradigm, and today I am with Mike Hofmann. You are the managing director of Melchers, which has been in China for 150 years. There is one thing for sure is that now I'm interviewing the oldest company I've ever interviewed in the podcast, maybe the oldest company I will have interviewed in my life in the podcast. Melchers entered like in 1860 something, I read in your presentation. And that's something actually for curiosity could be interesting to know how you survive all this history in China and where, maybe more Hong Kong at some point than mainland China. But that's something we will go back. So Melchers, what do? You're supporting the export and operations of companies, and with a strong focus on Asia and specifically in China, as far as I understand. And what gives me this feeling is that the name of Melchers has 3 characters next to it, which are Chinese characters. So it seems that China is very, very important for the company. You are making 600 million net. That's something maybe would be interesting to understand what means net. 600 million euros net of revenues. You are hiring 1,700 people worldwide, if my numbers are correct and updated. Now you are also you are doing manufacturing. You're helping to manufacture, but also to implement brands overseas, especially some premium brands, luxury goods that we are going to talk more in details. Thanks very much for being with us. Anything you'd like to add in the presentation?
No, it's very comprehensive. So yeah, the company is in China long time history. Obviously, myself, I'm not as old. The company always is over 200 years old, German company, and entered China 150 years ago via Hong Kong at that time, and then came to the mainland China. And basically, with some interruptions during and after the war times, basically since 150 years, always coming back to China, always building up again, and always constantly doing business here with own offices running on the ground. And like you said, it's very comprehensive. It's still family business, which is ownership, proprietary partnership. So it's not driven by stock market, which means a lot. We have very long-term view, which allows us to stay in businesses which are maybe not as good in 3 to 2 years, but look more on the long run. It's a long trustful partnerships. And this also has helped us over the year to adjust our portfolio. And nowadays, it's very entrepreneurial, the company still is, going always after where we can offer value services. We don't see us too much. We used to be a trading company with trading roots. We used to be trading goods between both countries. But nowadays, it's more going towards a service provider and a value-added service provider, where we can use our competencies in different fields to help brands to succeed in China.
So we mentioned before the group net sales is 600 million euros. Would you like to explain what you talk about when you talk about net sales?
Yeah, it's the official group number globally. China is the biggest market, but the group is not telling numbers by each market. It's basically the revenue, different word for them.
Okay. My understanding net sales was because you may have actually marketing expenses for your clients, or advertisement budget, or maybe you take into account only the commission part, or the part which is going to you. Is it a good understanding when we talk about net?
No, it's mainly after tax, you would say. So it's not income.
Okay. Sorry to be so detailed, but I like
sure.
Listen to us to have a good understanding of what you do, and I think those details help us to understand also what you do when you talk to an advertising agency, very often they say your revenues with marketing budget, with ad spending, and without ad spending, because ad spending is taking the money of the client to actually spend it on ads. So they usually distinguish. So I understand it's not that; it's more after tax. Okay. So would you like to help us to understand better what you do in details with maybe one or two case studies you feel most illustrative for China, and more specifically in the retail and premium industry, as we mentioned earlier, as a main topic for today?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, the group is business-wise very diverse. With one strong pillar is retail business here in China. And another one is sales of commissioning of machinery business. So but today we're focusing about our retail businesses there. Melchers is in this sector in China, actually in Asia, many countries, but we're now talking about China. In China, I would say it's over 15, 20 years experience in this industry. And we started it with being the partner for Swiss luxury watch brands. And what we did is that we were running the entire retail operation in China. So when I say running, it is we used to buy the products, we open the stores, we manage the stores, always in close cooperation, because the stores obviously have to be the same corporate identity as the Swiss watch manufacturer wants to have it, and if it's global branding. For marketing, you're often also talking with Switzerland in these terms, how to position your brand, how you do it. So we did the local entire market, entire marketing, distribution, importing, warehouse, and so on, but always in close cooperation. This is always the company's always doing, always with the brand partner. We work very closely because we want to ensure that we are not a trading house who buys a product and sells it, but rather to offer our advice, our marketing image, and also ensure that the whole brand image is secured in China. And especially as today, as you know, a lot of, especially in the premium segment, a lot of Chinese consumers buy actually their watches, for instance, overseas, because often of tax reasons are cheaper. So it more comes at seeing China holistic as a Chinese consumer. Everybody say China as a consumer is my biggest customer, but at the end, how much they really sell in the country and how much they sell otherwise. So that's often two different stories. So that's why you have to be very specific how you're marketing in China, and also because they may buy also overseas. So you have to be very careful for it.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't think about when preparing the interviews that the split between overseas sales by Chinese travelers basically, and the sales you generate in China could be actually a topic for you, because you may drive trade traffic to them overseas and may not be rewarded for it. Actually, also that could be a topic. Could you? Is it fair to say that you compete with Li & Fung and a company like Bluebell? Is it the same kind of business?
It's a little bit, yeah. But what is one difference? Of we do not have out-of-the-shelf product, so we are not saying this is our service. We always try to be as individualistic and customized as possible. This, I would say, is one secret why the company has been around so long, because we're constantly able to adjust our business. Overall, we're working in China in all of our businesses with more than 80 companies in different segments.
Wow.
And this is sometimes because sometimes what we see right nowadays, we still get a lot of contact from companies in retail, is fashion, handbags, and other industry, which saying, okay, I want to do my retail business in China. I maybe have already one or two stores, or I have already a distribution partner, but I need somebody who helps me maybe only with negotiation with the vendor. I need somebody who's only doing the accounting, do my back office function, for instance. Because they're saying, okay, they can sell, but I still need to see more a little bit on the corporate function support. I need somebody who helps me with the probe marketing here in China with my brand image. So sometimes we see that's going direction more and more, that retail brands looking for partner in different diverse fields. So we are also developing there. But of course, where we come from, this is maybe our strength in that area, that we're coming from the whole area where we did the entire business, entire retail operation, so we can use actually these competencies to help these brands.
I see. Why do you feel companies would go through a service provider like yours instead of going directly and setting up a company directly? What would be the key elements which would make them choose to go through your services, or what you think, in what circumstances they should better go through your services?
So what we see is always about risk and investment to make a decision. If you invest in China, how you set up your different licensing, franchising, own company, and so on. And not every company, or who is a global company, especially smaller companies who might not have the budget to do it themselves. And China is still a very complicated market. I mean, now you get a lot of more market information and so on, but it starts maintain the relationship, for instance, with the vendors, found the right locations, negotiate which is the right locations. You don't know if you're not here active. You have to negotiate with the different vendors for retail landlords, for instance, which is not always as easy. So it's a lot of a hustle, a lot of local knowledge needed. So it's very demanding market, demands very resources a lot. So not every company is either willing or capable to do that. And that's why they also benefit sometimes from a partner. So I would say smaller the company is, yes, the more they are in the need. But even big companies often work with partners in certain areas. For instance, China is a huge country. Maybe in the big cities, Beijing, Shanghai, you still can handle, but then you want to open in Chongqing, and it's totally like a different country, a different province in China. So sometimes it's really, some companies back in Europe, they underestimated or they have no capability to handle China as a whole. And that's why they're often looking for partners.
Yeah, I was checking the references you put in your presentation, and some of them are pretty big companies indeed, and well known, like Nexans. I mean, it's a French company, so I know it. But also, as we talked today, would be the main topic about retail brands, Breitling, which is I know it actually. I don't know if it's that famous, but actually I know it. So yeah, indeed, it's interesting to see that some companies which are actually already well known, well established worldwide, would go through some service provider. My feeling is that there is a cost of management which is actually pretty high to internalize China, and there is a risk of seeing your general manager leaving suddenly. There is a risk of suddenly not having a person who would understand the contracts inside and doesn't know how to manage a lawyer, but you are able to offer a continuity. I believe that that's something I think it brings a lot of value as well.
Yeah, and we also evolve in terms of market maturity. I mean, if you're looking back in our terms, the beginning often was when China was, after joining the WTO, after China opening up policy, everybody's got a little bit interested, but it was a little bit complex. So they rather worked with a partner and they give you the whole market. But nowadays, everybody said China is so important. I want to be there myself. I want to have a footprint there. So I have to be engaged. So what we have seen what that means for us is our business model has also changed. In the past, we were exclusive agent for China. We did everything. Nowadays, it's becoming to different areas, more specialized. We can add real value working with the partner. And the nice thing is we were still working with companies we worked 20, 30 years ago, but just in a different capacity, not exclusive anymore, but maybe only doing the after sales and the technical. So for the watch industry, for instance, we're having those in Beijing, Shanghai, to watch service repair centers, where we also do vocation training for our own watchmakers, where we repair because the watch needs to repair once they're bought. So it's always changing. You always have other areas, and also company you need to develop and stay relevant in the market. And through this evolution, also our business model has also changed.
I see more segmented, and actually companies could buy one piece or another and not the full package. How do you price your services? Is it on day-man unit, as we do at Dasher Consulting, for instance, would be day-man unit? Is it a total budget for 1 year and you commit on some goals? Is it depending on the volume of sales they have? Is it commission based? What are the main models you're using?
So we're using different models. We have, like I said, we try to be as much individualistic and customized as possible to be attractive, but this is of course on the downside, on the trade-off, you have don't have fixed prices in terms of this model costs you so much but what we do, we work in terms for the accounting. If we would do the back office service, then yes, then work with some depending on the workload. Having some fixed fees. Sometimes it's depending on the revenues. They're saying 2% revenue or higher on the fixed fee, whichever fee is higher. And it also depends, because sometimes company also have asked us to be involved in terms of, let's make a joint venture, let's take some share, please get some skin in the game, they call it. So then you have a different kind of negotiation and only being a service provider, because then you have also more business interests. So us as a company, we are always open to these different models. We don't say no to a capital investment. And that's why we always there negotiate. But basically it's either revenue based or it's a fixed fee. That's most, I would say, is the most common theme.
I see. Let's talk about more specifically in terms of operation, how to introduce a premium retail brand in China. The first question I would have is about building the team to actually manage this introduction. We know that a lot of information, a lot of culture can be lost when you build a new team in a country. What are the challenges you have seen, and how you have tackled them for introducing a premium brand, where actually the brand image, the culture is so important?
Yeah, I think HR topic in China is everywhere. No matter if it's premium or another company, it's always, you heard, a lot of changing, very demanding. You have high salary increases, high turnovers in general speaking. We have been quite success and keep the retention rate quite low, I have to say. So it's very comes down when you do the recruitment in the selection of what kind of people you like to have. And there you have to look a little bit what the brand represents and how the people are. So for instance, what you often see, what we don't sometimes from the watch industry for our luxury, we don't hire people from other watch companies.
Okay.
We don't do that because often they are already like kind of, and how do we say, not toxic is the wrong word, but they are already in the other way of the other brand, and then they maybe bring that to your brand, but your brand is different position. So we instantly looking for us, for the salespeople, they have to be very customer oriented, very sales oriented, very customer mind. So we're rather looking for if you look for salespeople from hospitality industry, for instance.
I see.
Or for some airline industry or something like that. So where a customer service is very important. This is especially in the premium segment. It is more easier than if you have, of course, a consumer goods business. But this help doesn't then require the same quite success strategy we're doing for here. We are very hesitant to hire people like from other watches, definitely not. From other premium brands, yes, we do, but we from like I said, from watches, not so much. In the end, and once you have them on board, of course, you need to keep them, you need to provide training, you need to keep them motivated, you need to keep them up to date, classic things, I would say. And we don't try for the sales commission, push them too much in terms what you often see in the market, that the base salary is very low and they need to live from commission, which is standard for the sales. But if you make it too, especially in China with the high living cost, if you make the base salary too low, they switch very easy. They're too aggressive salespeople, and then especially that can be off-putting in the industry where we are in for the premium luxury, because your customers are also premium. They want to be good service. They don't want to be too much pushed into the sales. And now we have too much sales-driven people sometimes. It didn't work out. So we go rather for people more on the customer service area, which people do, and pay maybe a little bit more base salary to order to facilitate them, that they consult and make the customer experience in the center of the sales.
How do you train, and how much time do you think you need to make a salesperson good enough to sell a luxury product? I'm asking you this question because my first business in China was actually in Beijing. You are based in Beijing, right?
Beijing,
Yeah,
yes.
it was in Beijing, and I was selling gift boxes of experience. In German, it's called Erlebnisgeschenk. Right? Das Erlebnis and das Geschenk. And so you have this gift where you have coupons inside, and I mean, you have a leaflet, and you can check. You can use one activity inside when you receive it. The thing is that we were distributing. We were selling in 20 point of sales, and we had our own people selling. But I realized the salesperson had never been to, let's say, a French restaurant or German restaurant. So when in the leaflet she had to talk about a French restaurant, the only comment she should have is say, "Oh, it's nice. It's French." That's it. No more. So if it was to sell about an activity like we had this kind of thing, driving a Ferrari for 10 minutes, this kind of things, she could emphasize the brand, but not much more. Even the brand, she was not very familiar with it. So how do you create this culture, this knowledge, and this training to ramp up quickly? And how much time do you think it's needed?
Uh, it's a good question. How much time is it needed? Maybe personally, I would say that it's a little different. What we do is that we making tests regularly with the people in terms of the knowledge of the product. For instance, for watches, it's a very technical product. Even doesn't seem so. So this you can make very nice tests every 3-6 months, for instance, to see at least on that level, to see if the people is really progressing, and make it that at the end of the vision period, you see if the people have at least the basic knowledge to sell the customer asking any technical specialty. And they do, and especially in the luxury segment, they're very detailed sometimes. They have to even thinking, wow, what a question I never would have thought of. The Chinese customers are very interested in very small details of that. So how much we train them, the other thing you have to oversee from experienced people, how they're doing, behave towards the customer, how they're training. I wouldn't say we don't have except for the technical parts, for the real to get the feeling, you don't have saying you have so many hours training, because it's constant training, and even thinking lifelong learning, we are believing, and I would say that. So yeah, we have trainings in regular every couple of months and things like that, but it's mandatory for the people.
Does it mean that actually introducing a brand in your company with you is going to rely maybe on one person who is going to be the main product manager, and then who is going to actually make sure that the training is good, make sure that the locations are good? How do you organize an introduction? Is it one person who has the role of general manager? Or is it a split, like one person is in charge of sales, recruiting people, and training them, but for different companies, different brands? Or is it one main person, kind of general manager?
Yeah, so we have, it depends on how big the company is. So at the beginning, I would say it's more like an incubator. We always try to share services for the back office function. So we have to have a recruitment person who is always the recruitment for luxury, for retail business. So there is a knowledge that we use this. And at the beginning, when we set up and maybe showing together with the brand owner, we hire some people who will be, yes, you can call it as a general manager, sometimes director. It's irrelevant. Basically, one person you entrust the most to slowly build it up with you together, and often the brand owner is also getting strongly involved. As more as it grows bigger, and some companies want it right from the beginning, and either they set up their own legal entity managed by us, or like I said before, they asked us to invest some capital. But then it's real own company setup, but they use the shared services back off. They use the financial accounting, they use the HR service, for instance, from on the group level. And they focusing then on sales. And then depending how much a company wants to be involved themselves, we also have that sometimes they send people over to China as an expatriate. This sometimes happen, especially at the beginning, if they want to have a more firmer control of the operation. In other instances, it works, the person goes over to Europe to be trained for some certain amount of time. So it really depends on the brand, but it's both ways. Sometimes sent over, sometimes going there. And at the beginning, I was saying, when they're starting, yes, then it's 1 or 2 people, but it grows the bigger the operation, and it becomes also a more more shoulders. But it's also our role to ensure that once a person would leave, it doesn't stumble across. So it's very our service to install processes to make sure there's a possible successor in place as the business matures, and not that somebody, then the whole business crumbles. That would be a nightmare. Yeah.
So we talked about the salespeople, but we haven't talked about the locations, where they work, which shops, how do you negotiate the locations? I feel finding good locations in China has been more and more challenging because now it's costly. 10 years ago when I arrived in China, I remember a brand called 68. It was underwear brand, and they were from actually China, but they had from Hong Kong more specifically, but they had a brand identity which is Western, and they were in all the good malls, and that's how they got famous. And now it's much more difficult for them to be in the good mall because it's much more expensive. But 10 years ago, they could try to go to a mall, fail, and go somewhere else. It was not that expensive. So how do you identify the right locations, and how do you negotiate a good deal with this location? And finally, what kind of deal are negotiable? Fixed plus commissions, purely commissions, fixed plus commissions, but a minimum of sales to reach out, otherwise you are kicked out. What kind of parameters?
Yeah, that's a good question. And as you just said, the rents in China are getting very, very expensive. We have some friends coming from the West first time, and then they visit and then first time see the figures per square meter or whatever, and they get shocked, saying, "Wow, that's more expensive than New York Fifth Avenue in Beijing." Sometimes saying, "Yeah, but this is unfortunate. If you want a premium luxury shopping mall for your luxury product, it's the price you have to be on the market." And this is very, very, very expensive. So, and that's also the locations. They are crowded. They are sought after. Everybody wants to be in China. That's the point. So you have a lot of competitors. So, but on the other hand, a lot of shopping mall opens at all the time in China. So which one is the right one? That's indeed a very question every brand struggle with, and sometimes the wrong locations get chosen. Absolutely. So depending on the reputation of the shopping mall, for instance, where normally your point of sales is in China, sometimes you're not able to negotiate at all with the vendors that they tell you because they have so many on their on their list. Sometimes they approach you because they open a new shop, so they want you as a brand. If you have something pull in people from the street, so they give you. I mean, the most sought after space is the ground floor level, which is the highest one. So if they sought you, they want you as a brand represent once they open a new shopping mall, then you have a little bit more leverage now when you negotiate. And each shopping mall also have a little bit different business model, but sometimes you have like fixed fee or revenue, whichever is higher. This is very common. So, and that you're having, I don't know, that Beijing SKP is one of the most expensive in Beijing, and then I have like for different categories, for fashion, it's different than watches and so on. And they ask you sometimes in some categories, 24% of your sales. Yeah, or
20, how much? 25? 20%. Wow.
Depending on the categories, it's different for underwear than luxury. And the more expensive it is, the more they want to have. So basically, then at the end, you see they get a margin of a dealer. If you would work with a distributor who wants us 20 to 30%, the same one you pay to a shopping mall. So they're saying, and they want to have whatever is higher, and they want to have a fixed fee of 100, 200,000 RMB sometimes. So it's really, you have really expensive. So that's why I have to be careful which select and how many we want to select. And then some brands saying, okay, if China is so expensive, I might make only, I know, to attract 4, 5, 6 point of sales and more focus on the online sale to make it more to work online, offline together. And if you negotiate with the vendors, like you mentioned, it really depends. Some are very, like I said, welcoming and they want your brand and you can negotiate, and others are a little bit downwards looking at you and saying, we have all the brands, you have all your competitors. If you want here, that's the cost, and go out. And then at the end, you have to check the contracts. The devil is in the detail. I would have sometimes in there, there's a surcharge on this, there's a surcharge on that. This you can sometimes negotiate, but you have to be very careful to look at that. And then you need a good law firm or a good legal law firm here in China who knows that to avoid you from getting paying that too much.
You just mentioned SK. SK is Sing Kong Place. This is the most luxury mall or department store, I don't know actually, in Beijing and in China maybe, in Dawanlu. And indeed, they basically, I don't think you negotiate with them. You try to wait actually, and you beg them to enter. What I heard as well is that it's pretty common that you have a fixed amount. So the standard agreement, as far as I understood, is fixed amount, commission. But if you don't reach a certain level of commissions, you will have to pay actually an extra fixed amount or to be kicked out after some time. So even some people, I remember in Sing Kong like 6 years ago, they were doing fake FAPIO, actually fake sales, in order to stay in business in the mall because they didn't want to lose this location, which was a good location, to pretend they were doing as much to show that people actually it was an attractive brand. Is it a standard way of working?
Well, I would say yes, in terms of like you said, that is a fixed fee and a revenue base. So sometimes it's also mixed. You have the fixed fee plus the revenue, and in other terms, like I said, you have a minimum or percentage of revenue, whichever is higher, so in the months. And of course, they're looking at a period of terms. You have to bring in so much revenue because their business, especially if it's a shopping mall which has a long waiting list of other brands want to enter, there can be then more ending the partnership after a certain amount of times. And yeah, with the fake FAPIO, luckily we didn't have to do that, but yeah, that is possible. Something in China, you'll not be surprised that some brands go there if they really want the location, but then if they make their calculation, it really works for them. But it's really like you said, so that's why it's getting very expensive also in China.
Which format do you think have you seen more successful? Is it more a 10 square meters, a booth? Is it more to have a shop by yourself? Is it more to have a corner? What would you suggest for a market entry in terms of format to have your own actually space, or to work with a wholesaler to be among different brands? What format would you suggest?
Well, I mean, there's also third way. I mean, the one is your own point of sales. You fully run it yourself. Another point, sometimes companies they work with retail companies partners. It's because China is so big, you barely can cover the whole country. So in some countries, in some cities, they work like a partner for Beijing who does their businesses there, who has sometimes own point of sales, and then he wants to have your product, or sometimes, like you just said, with the department kind of shop-in-shop system. What we've seen is that brands, also I think also in the West, similar brands want to be having their own stores, either with a partner of them. They don't like to be together with other brands too much. This is also we're seeing in China. They want to be standing out of the crowd. This we also recommend on normal. If it's an own store with a partner, or if you make a small one and then more doing online, this really depends on the category of the business and also how the brand is willing to invest in China, how they want to do this. You would then try to talk with them about how's the China. Yeah. And also for some brands, I mean, the more luxury it is, the better, more luxury scarcity you can have to have less stores. And especially think about more, the Chinese often buy it overseas. It's more like a flagship store. You also invest more money in China, but they buy it also sometimes overseas. So you have to see it more on a business bigger scale model. While in other instances saying, no, that doesn't make sense for our model. We really need to sell in China for China. And then you maybe go for, also maybe not for a shopping mall, but maybe for a lower category, and you make an own store, for instance.
In Shanghai, in Xintiandi, I got the number that Starbucks was paying 35 or 40 RMB per day per square meters. What are we talking about in Beijing, in a premium place for a premium brand, if it wants to have its own shop? Are we talking more about 15, 20, 30 RMB per square meter per day? And that's the way we work in China. In China, we work per day, per square meter.
Yeah. It's a huge scope. depends which shopping mall location and how it's rated in which business district. Rents can easily go up about 50, 60, 70 RMB per day.
Wow.
So I would say Beijing, Shanghai, there is no really big difference. Average would say should calculate when you enter market entry and you're more in the premium segment, 50 to 60, you should calculate, put into your
Okay, so 50 to 60.
negotiating that when you make your business case.
I see. And when you negotiate a space, how much deposit do you have to put? And usually how much do you have to expect to renovate, let's say a 50 square meter or a 100 square meter? How much budget do you need to allocate to open the first shop, basically?
Yeah, you should between around about 3 months rent, we recommend.
Okay.
Always sometimes you can negotiate a little bit, but 3 months rent maybe. And when you said for the renovation, and there's also difference. That's for the shopping mall. It's also not unique. It's a problem. I say that often now in this talk because you see China City, every vendor here is a little bit different. But that makes it also so complicated by the companies. Once they hear it and then they talk with them, they really understand that. Sometimes we cannot give a clear answer on that. So it's also how much retail technology you want to go in, think about new retail. And so on. So some companies go there to bring smart mirrors in or other things, or connecting somehow with their POS system and with their online stores, for instance. You easily should calculate around about, we would say for 100 square meter, okay, for 50.5, around about 150,000 euros, so around about 100,000 maybe euros, so 800,000 RMB you might should.
Okay, for the renovation, for the interior design.
Yes.
I see.
And sometimes it's mostly, however, you should, that for the point of sale system, you have to make in the link to the shopping mall, because that's how they want to track your sales, that you don't.
Yeah.
So.
But this is a part which is actually maybe cheaper in China than in the West to renovate and to reorganize a shop.
I would say similar.
Similar? Okay.
That's the location.
Okay. So we talked about the salespeople, we talked about the locations where they are, and there's one piece you mentioned, which is big in China, bigger in China than everywhere else, is online marketing, online sales. Is it something you also manage, the online presence? And what's your experience of managing the online presence for premium brands? We know that China has been built on marketplaces, Tmall, and nobody would imagine to luxury brand to be on Amazon in Germany or in France or in Europe, wherever. So how do you manage the online presence of luxury brands, and what to be careful of?
Yeah. So like you said, it's not uncommon to have presences on the marketplaces, and there's always also here different options. You can opt to make your own flagship store on Tmall, for instance, or sometimes there is so-called TP partners or Tmall partners, which then offers it, which means it's a company who's specialized in one segment or different and does everything for you: warehousing, order fulfillment, customer returns, payments. So then you just deliver them the goods and they do it for you. And they charge you also monthly fee and a revenue fee. So basically it's like a normal distributor. You can do the whole operation yourself, like I said, and sometimes they're multi-brand stores. So there's a big variety. And then sometimes which marketplace you go, right? For the Tmall, you go to JD, they don't like each other and make it hard for you when they have discounts event on each other. So it's time to spend on basically also here how much you want to get involved. Do you want to give it out of hand, or you want to have the control? And this also steers you a little bit. Do I working with a partner? Do I build up my own infrastructure? So this is also things you have to decide on in your China strategy. So coming back to the question, what do we do? Yes, we do working on the online marketplaces with our partners together, either with Tmall partner, for instance. This is normally the way we do it, because so far the partner is so complex. We normally agree, okay, we're focusing more on the offline sales, and we work here with a partner which we control and which we steer and work with, for instance. And yeah, it's very common for luxury brands to have online market presence, sell online in China.
So you would recommend to go with a TP, Taobao partner, Tmall partner, to work to go online in China and to be present on marketplaces.
I would recommend, mostly it makes the most sense. When I say mostly, like say every company, when you do the business case with China, you have to see what is the alternative cost. Do it myself. You have to build up infrastructure. You have to deal with the customer returns. You have to deal with the payment. You have to make the reimbursements. It's broken warranty cases and so on. So if you invest enough and build up your own team, of course you can do that one. But for smaller brands, normally they, especially in the first steps, they work with a partner.
And about working with a TP, then what kind of contract do you have? And let's have a bit of similar analysis than with retail. Is it a deposit? Is it a deposit? Do you need to put a deposit? Is it based on fixed and commissions? What is a typical deal you can get with them?
Yeah, here also the partner has different model what service they provide. So what is normally common? First, you make a payment for the setup of the store, which is design, which is taking pictures of the inventory, positioning, do it search engine optimized, things like that. So they pay normally a fixed sum, and it is also depending how many pictures you have, but you have easily from 2 to 4, 500,000 RMB. You have to make that investment, and then for being able.
It does.
This is like order that fee, yeah? And then they won't have their sales commission, like a normal offline partner.
So they would take 20%.
Which is then depending because then it's the Tmall partner's business. So some want to have a higher commission and a less fixed monthly annual fee, and some rather wants to have a higher annual fee and a less commission, but you can calculate that the commission is between 15 to 25%.
I see. So very similar actually with the offline. They kind of copied the model.
Exactly.
Interesting.
For cost side, online is not cheaper. Some people often think cheaper. It may be cheaper if you do it yourself. When I say the calculation, if you work with a partner, that is not really cheaper. It's a one distribution model. But in China, it's not necessarily cheaper.
Because the fixed amount is supporting to actually pay, let's say, the people working on at the TP, but it doesn't include maybe all the advertisement spend, which would be more included in the commission part. Is it correct?
Yes, and it's also you can talk with them about sometimes how much marketing you want to allocate, because they can run it for you, the marketing.
Yes.
For Double 11, for instance, or the other festivals, online shopping, you're expected to give discounts and make some noise to get the people attract, and they can do that for you. Yeah, but they want, of course, get a payment for that. This is something you want to talk with the partner about. Yeah. How much you want to allocate there?
I believe a lot of premium brands would be skeptical or cautious to give their brand image to a Tmall partner, because I believe for a shop, they can go and see how the shop is. But for online, it can go everywhere. Suddenly there is someone who is working on your brand, writing a comment on WeChat or opening a channel on Zhihu and so on. Is it a concern among clients you have? Is it a concern among people around you that actually the Tmall partner may not totally understand the brand identity and may not be able to actually convey it online as well as the brand itself? And then, if that's the case, how to manage it?
What we've seen is they are normally very experienced working with marketing and PR around the globe. So they have some experience in this. And what is always the key is that you work closely with this partner and don't give them too long leash, and you tell them clearly what the brand stands about. You need to control it. KPIs or see it, and you need to pull the plug. So they are not very afraid of working with it because they see it just kind of as an agent you have to control and it does not ruin your brand or something like that.
Okay. So it hasn't been a major issue. I was thinking it could have been. It's already 45 minutes, so now we are moving to the last questions, the typical question we ask at the end of the interview. And some of them are about books. And what books have inspired you most in your China journey? 12 years.
That's a good question. I thought about, because I don't have a specific book on China. Well, what I would say, what have inspired me for sure is from Anil Gupta, The Quest for Global Dominance. Anil Gupta used to be my professor in my MBA school, and I like the book especially from his perspective, looking on how you play the global chess game. It's also emphasized on China and India, how you should make a global strategy, which is very important for brands and how you position that yourself, and I can take out quite a lot of it. As I would say, me personally, also what I like, which is not to do anything with China, but I like to say is Total Recall from Arnold Schwarzenegger. I like very much.
Okay.
It really shows it's inspiring, very inspiring book, how different careers he had, and the mindset to stay hungry, always push to grow yourself in life and learning, and always set high achievements onto a goal, and it's kind of very inspirational.
Interesting. So talking about what you're reading to stay up to date about China, do you have specific newsletter or newspaper?
Yeah, what I often read is that it's in German, but the German Chamber of Commerce has a good weekly summary with news, which means it's basically different newspapers together, so it helps a lot to get in the German media. Then I abonnent from HSBC Bank. They have a good China weekly newsletter. Wall Street Journal is always interested if it's China related. Sometimes very good article they're having. And
okay. If you had the extra time on working on something new, what would you do in China?
I think if I would have the time and your own business or something like that, I would probably look more into how we're working as a company as what retail business brands coming to China. But what we could maybe do as the future, or there's something which I would look at, is something, because Chinese outbound tourism is so growing and so many going, and we know they all shop overseas, but how you attract them better to come to your store. And I think there's still market opportunity in Europe for the retailers supporting how you attract them, because it's when they are in Europe, it's already too late. You have to help them more here. So I would like how to help them better to position themselves.
I see. Very interesting.
So actually, how do they do their marketing or things like that?
Yeah, actually, your focus is Chinese consumers wherever they are. If they go to Germany, you can still handle them, and you need a specific service for them because they use WeChat, they use Alipay, WeChat Pay, and so on. Interesting. What unexpected success have you witnessed in China? When I'm using the word unexpected success, we get this word from Peter Drucker, so the strategist. He said that innovation, in order to track innovation, it's very important to look at, it's a good way to look at innovation through unexpected success. So something you wouldn't have expected to be successful and which has been successful.
I think China is still an amazing country with so much going on, and I see that Chinese people are still hungry and growth, and it's fascinating me since I'm here. I'm now 12 years here, and that's always seeing. So it was unexpected. I mean, at the end, you can think China has a plan for everything. But what I would not have seen unexpected, I've witnessed is that China catched up so fast in the digital space as an ecosystem. which is something, China as a state company, everything is planned, 5-year plans and stuff like that. And then comes along private companies in the digital space, which the people are using, and the people are very open to adapt for their life, and also starting to raise their opinions and share about this is WeChat, Alibaba, whatever, and that they have come as a user copycat in the past now to what they are today. And this is quite fascinating. I have to say, I would not have guessed that in the time are here, especially in a short time frame, and how huge it's going to be.
Yeah. How digital the economy is.
But on the other hand, I'm still, by the way, fascinated or surprised sometimes by the big contrast, because on the one hand you have this one, on the other hand, as a company, you still have to go in person to the bank to pay salaries, things like that sometimes. I mean, you can do online payment, but at the end you still need to get a job, so you still have a lot of old administration things come over from the old times. So this is kind of living next to each other. This is so interesting.
It's very true. On the opposite, what unexpected failure? What have you seen that failed in China? Could be foreign businesses, could be a business, could be an organization, could be a way of living, whatever. What unexpected failure have you witnessed, which was surprising?
Yeah, surprising. I would say, you also see sometimes failure. Things how you learn and get out from that. I think as China is moving so fast, they're always trying things out, and sometimes they fail very, very fast. Just to name one, what I see now, I mean, now we are in a trade war with the US, and what you're seeing a little bit is that maybe China realized, that's also I was a little bit surprised that they are not so independent yet as I might have thought, in terms of what happened when the ZTE last 2 years ago. That was the one which was a little surprise to me, and China suddenly realized, hey, we don't have so much different microchips when they nearly went bankrupt. So this was a surprise to me, I think, for whole China. Surprise to, it's such crucial importance. We are still dependent. And this is something China might realize. Me, myself, is that real CSU, sometimes what's happening in China economy, some parts of it, they always present, they're strong, innovative, everybody wants to be here, but still vulnerable in some terms. And I've seen, it's not a failure per se, but it's something I would say is an unexpected surprise.
Yeah. It's very funny. I had exactly the same remark to a friend yesterday, telling him that Qualcomm and the chips and so on, which are American, actually are so vital for China that it can weigh into trade war. It's very interesting. Thank you very much, Mike, for your time. I hope you enjoyed the talk. I hope everyone who listening to us has enjoyed the talk. And if you like it, you can like it digitally as well. You can write 5 stars. You can comment on our iTunes channel, Spotify, wherever you listen to our podcast or vlog. Thank you everyone for listening. And thanks, Mike, again for being with us.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.